In the quiet town of Grisham, Oregon, the morning of January 17, 1994 started like any other. 3 employees at a gas station in a thinly populated commercial area of small businesses were busy tending to their duties, unaware of the horrific events that were about to unfold. What should have been an ordinary workday turned into a scene of unimaginable violence when 3 lives were brutally taken in cold blood. This is the story of the Leathers Oil Company murders. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In 1994, Portland, Oregon and its surrounding areas, including Grisham, were grappling with rising crime rates, especially violent crimes. Like many U.S. cities at the time, Portland experienced the effects of the national crime wave that peaked in the early 90s. The increased availability of drugs, particularly methamphetamine and crack cocaine, contributed significantly to the uptick in criminal activity. Portland's law enforcement agencies worked to combat these rising crime rates with mixed success. While efforts to target criminal activity were ramped up, resources were often stretched thin, especially as crime began to spill over into the suburbs. Robberies targeting gas stations, convenience stores, and local businesses were becoming more frequent, and local police in Grisham were less equipped to handle the sharp increase in violent crimes, which led to growing concern among residents and a heightened sense of vulnerability. It was against this backdrop that 3 employees arrived to open the small gas station that cold winter morning. Virginia K. Endicott, age 47, was a divorced mother of 2 sons. She lived with her family in the small town of Boring at the base of the Cascade Mountains, about 15 minutes away from the station. She was trained as a licensed beautician, but worked for the Leathers Oil Company as a bookkeeper. She typically worked in the company office, but was at the station that morning to pick up receipts from the weekend sales. She had been with the company off and on for 20 years, and steadily for the last 5 years. Described as fun-loving and outgoing, she was artistic, often gifting personally decorated sweatshirts to friends and co-workers. Rosalie Faye Gertz, age 51, lived with her family in the small suburb of Happy Valley, about 10 miles southeast of Portland. She was the manager of the station and usually arrived around 5:30 a.m. She had briefly divorced her husband of 31 years, but on this morning they had remarried in a 4:30 a.m. ceremony just prior to her going to work. Mary Beth Carey, 25, lived with her family in the small town of Sandy, 27 miles east of Portland. She was the daughter-in-law of Rosalie and had worked as an attendant at the station for about 6 months. She had 2 young children and generally kept to herself. The station, located at 1225 Southeast Orient Drive near the US 26 intersection, opened as usual at 6 a.m. that morning. Regular customers came and went on their morning routines, with the final transaction at 6:20 a.m. 15 minutes later, at 6:35 a.m., a customer pulled to the pumps expecting to be greeted by Mary Beth. Instead, with none of the other handful of nearby businesses open and a heavy fog hanging over the area, the station was eerily quiet. Not seeing anyone around, the customer walked into the station to find 3 women lying face down on the oil-stained floor of the service bay. Police arrived to find that Virginia, Rosalie, and Mary Beth had all been shot in the back of the head, execution style. They were all deceased. Robbery appeared to be the motive, with $9,000 taken. However, it was later determined that several $1,000s was left. Police theorized this was due to the perpetrators having left in a hurry and not completing the robbery. In an effort to locate witnesses, police stopped motorists in the area the following morning to hand out flyers asking for anyone who had been near the scene the day before to come forward. 7 people had useful information. Police received a tip that a 1980s Chevrolet Chevette or similar vehicle that was brown with yellow or gold pinstripes was seen at the station about the time of the killings. Despite their best efforts, this car was never located. Brent Leathers, general manager of the company, initially offered a $7,500 reward, then raised it to $10,000, hoping it would generate solid leads. The impact of the killings not only devastated the families and friends of the victims, but also left a scar on the community. Families and law enforcement officials publicly criticized Grisham Police Chief Art Norrie's reluctance to ask for assistance from the county sheriff and DA's office for 11 days, fearing the lost time may have caused valuable clues to be lost. While 2 security lights were added, 1 to each side of the building, and Tiny, a 162-pound bull mastiff, was brought onto the property as added protection, Several attendants at other Leathers stations quit, and employees refused to work at the Grisham station. 4 weeks into the investigation, the case was nearly stalled. Police had investigated all the suggestions the family could offer. A break in the case came on February 10, 1994, when an informant called police with a lead. 2 months later, they would identify their suspects. Tyrom Thies, age 20, had worked for the station for a year before being fired for taking $30 from the cash register at the station he managed. He later returned the money, apologized, and admitted he was wrong. According to Supervisor Harry L. Staton, "I trusted that guy implicitly. I felt bad because I came down on him so hard. The guy cried right in front of me." Thies, who had gone to modeling school and had no prior adult criminal record, grew up in a close-knit blended family and was considered by those who knew him to be respectful and quiet. He had moved into the Parkwoods apartment, number 8, at 16711 Southeast Powell Boulevard with his cousin a year earlier. Lori Ann Stevens, age 23, had met Thies and his cousin when they worked at the Burger King restaurant she managed. She was married, but indications are that she may have been dating Thies and also lived in the apartment with him and his cousin. Thies' cousin, with whom he shared the apartment, Lawrence Benjamin Scherf, age 20, had also been fired from the Leathers Oil Company. While he also had no previous criminal record, several who knew him claimed he was violent. Frank Dorr, who supervised the cousins at the oil company, said Scherf didn't like to work and said he knew Scherf had guns as he had seen him pull one out and point it at another individual while in the apartment. Neighbors in the apartment complex told police that the three frequently argued and none of them were seen at the apartment after February 13th. Both Stevens and Scherf were offered reduced sentences if they testified against Thies, who police believed, based on the statements of Stevens and Scherf, was the actual triggerman, having killed the women because Virginia, whom he knew, recognized him. They were each given a sweetheart deal of 10 years with release after 8 with good behavior. Thies has never been apprehended. There are several things about this case that bother me. The biggest issue being that there is no evidence, physical or circumstantial, that ties Thies to the killings other than the statements of his co-defendants. And quite frankly, their stories don't make sense to me. I believe the police, facing mounting public pressure and having absolutely no evidence, made a deal in order to hold someone at least partially responsible. We have the story of Lori Stevens, a woman who drifted from job to job and left her small child and husband to live with 2 men. While this is certainly not proof of any guilt, it does speak to her character. She was facing 30 to 75 years in prison for the murders, plus additional time on the robbery charges unless she testified against Thies. Her initial statements to police indicated that she had driven the trio to the station that morning but didn't know they were going to rob it. She stated that Thies got out of the car with a mask over his face, carrying a paper bag that contained a gun. She saw him demand money and direct the women to the floor, and when he returned to the car, he told them that he had killed the 3 women. She said he bought gifts for her with some of the money, and she had the balance of the money at one time, but gave it back to Thies. She also said that Thies had threatened to kill her son and husband if she talked. As for Scherf, he too drifted from job to job and was known to be violent and have guns. His story was identical to Lori's. He waited in the car while thieves robbed and killed 3 women. Thies didn't own a gun. Where did he get the one he supposedly had that morning? Did he get it from Scherf? If so, surely that would have been an indication that something was going to happen. Also, Thies wearing a mask would seem to contradict the police theory that Virginia recognized him and he killed the women to eliminate witnesses. But above all else, what bothers me most about this case is that the police openly admit they have no evidence against Thies other than the statements of these 2 co-defendants. So I ask you, does it make sense that a mild-mannered, respectful, nonviolent young man with no history of mental illness just decides one day to murder 3 people, and then be able to disappear without a trace, even as the police publicly admit he has no street smarts? No, my research indicates that Thies is most likely innocent of the murders, and police should have taken a harder look at his 2 co-defendants. I am by no means saying that Thies is completely innocent. I just don't believe he was capable of killing 3 people in cold blood. Where is he now? Well, Thies has not been seen since February 9, 1994. America's Most Wanted aired a segment on him, but it did not generate any leads. He is easily identifiable due to a large tattoo of a panther across his chest. I suspect he was probably silenced to keep him from telling what he knew. He was not a hardened criminal, and law enforcement could have easily broken him if they'd had the chance. Partial justice was served with the sentencing of Stevens and Scherf, but it's not enough. The families deserve to know the truth of what happened that day. Hopefully someday we can answer the question of what actually happened that January morning. If you have any thoughts, theories, or comments about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.